The interactions that Shimataji had with us sometimes involved words and sometimes they were wordless. And for me, some of these wordless experiences were very deep and very joyous and very loving and sometimes quite humorous. So I'm going to start with a short story that involved no words. I was serving Shimataji in Los Angeles, and her room was upstairs, and downstairs there was a kitchen and other rooms and so on. And we were getting ready to have lunch for her, but there were two Saj yogis who were visiting, and they were with Shimataji in her room. And as a server, it was my job to inform the kitchen ladies when Shimataji was free to receive her meal. And so what I did was every 5 to 10 minutes I would kind of, first of all, let me just say, I meant to tell you this quick introduction. This is a story that showed to me that Shimataji can see around the corner. So every 5 to 10 minutes I would climb up those stairs and I would listen. Are those two yogis still there? Yes, they're still talking to Shimataji. Okay. So come back down. Please keep the pots heated up. You know, it's still going to take a little while. So finally I go upstairs at one point and it's complete silence. So I don't know what's going on. I don't have a visual confirmation. So I'm thinking, if I just pop my head like this, it's going to look kind of funny because Shimataji was facing towards me. You know, I didn't want to, you know, be put in that kind of embarrassing position. So how do I get a visual confirmation? I start to think about it, and eventually I come up with this solution. So the stairs coming up led directly to the door of Shimataji's room, which is open. So I figure, what is the least probable place where Shimataji would be looking towards the door? And I figure it would be a corner of the door frame, the lower corner. Why would she looking there, right? So I lay down on the stairs with my head ready, close to the corner of the window, the door frame, ready to pop at some point. So I kind of get my courage together and I pop my head. And guess where Shimataji was looking? Directly there. And her expression was like, what in the world? So Shimataji sees around the corner. She knew I was there. She knew my head was there. And she was like, when is he going to pop his head over? And at the time I was serving Shimataji in, this time it was in New Jersey, much closer to home. And Shimataji knows everything. And she proved it to us many times. So I went with Lothar to offer her. There was a huge cake that Lothar had bought. It was a big red cake, beautiful. Shimataji was by herself. Lothar was carrying this humongous, beautiful cake. And I was following close behind. And so Lothar offers it to her, tells her where it was bought, how it was made, like, you know, a big story. And Shimataji very indulgently lets him finish and then looks at the cake and says, "This has alcohol." And Lothar, like his face kind of melts and it doesn't know how to, you know, retreat with the cake. And I don't know how to retreat fast enough, you know. And I'm also kind of, you know, devastated, but I'm thinking at least it didn't happen to me. So a few days later, I'm serving Shimataji dinner, and for Shimataji they cooked with Splenda, so without sugar, and for CCP it was with sugar. And so there's these two beautiful confectionery items, cakes. And so I take the first one to Shimataji, I offer it to her. She didn't speak at all those days, but at that moment she spoke. She looked at the cake that I had brought her, and then she said, "This has sugar." It was my turn to, I didn't know how fast to pull my ears, and I had switched the cakes. But of course, luckily Shimataji knew everything. This was an experience that happened at an airport and started again without words. It was very deep, something that I will, remember for the rest of my life. So this was like 1993. I had already been introduced to Shimataji. I had the blessing of, being introduced to her, and we were offering her. This is like she had come to LA, and we were offering her flowers. She was sitting down. And as I was standing in line, getting in, closer to her with the flower, I just felt like she's Yadi Shakti. I cannot face her. I cannot look at her. So I did not look at her as I was approaching her. I just looked down to her feet, and I came and did namaskar to her. And then I held my flower like this, without looking at her, because I just could not look in her face. She was God. And then I waited. And Shimataji did not take the flower. And then I started to slowly raise my eyes to her, and she had this beautiful smile. She was just looking at me, waiting for me to raise my eyes to her and look into her eyes. And when I looked into her eyes and I saw her heart-melting smile, then she took my flower. And then she looked at me, and all of a sudden she goes, "I know you. I know who you are. What happened to you? I didn't recognize you." And I'm thinking, something must be terribly wrong with my chakras or something, Ooh. And I didn't know what the problem was exactly, but I was a student back in those days, and I was eating very poorly. I think I spent $80 for food per month. I was eating every day the same thing, ramen, noodles, I don't remember exactly, but, and Shimataji says, "You are very thin." And I don't know what I said, but later that day I felt very hungry, and Shimataji, during that trip, asked me to go to India and get married, which I did, and I gained 20 pounds. First year of marriage after that. But there was the going joke after Shimataji left the airport. Yogis were coming up to me and saying, "I heard that Shimataji did not see you at the airport." Because I was living in Texas, Shimataji was very interested in George W. Bush, and she really wanted him to become president. And so when he was the governor, she used me to communicate with him, send letters and so on. And it was pretty amazing because I would draft a letter and then fax it to Shimataji. She would read it and she would write, she would cross things out and write things over and fax it back to me, and then I would, update the letter and so on. And so I won't tell you all the details, but she spent a lot of time telling me about him and also about world politics, things which were going completely over my head. And it took me a long time to realize that because she felt that somehow I had this connection with him, through me she could work on him, and through him she could work on global politics. She was telling me things about trade practices in China. I was like, whee! You know, I couldn't understand a thing, but I was just sitting there absorbing what she was saying because it had an effect somewhere else. And she told me, she said, only for Abraham Lincoln I have as much love as I have for George W. Bush. She loved him so much. And she said she was very innocent, very humorous, and very dharmic. And she I used to dictate letters to me, and then I would try to remember and